I'm 101 years old, and I'm about to tell you something that almost nobody will ever tell you. Not your parents, not your teachers, not your therapist, not even the hundreds of self-help books that promise to fix your life. And do you know why? Because the truth I'm about to tell you is too uncomfortable. It's too honest, too painful, and once you truly understand it, you will never be able to go back to living the way you do right now. You see, when you live as long as I have, something strange happens. You start watching entire lifetimes disappear. I've buried 3 husbands. I've buried one of my own children. I've buried friends I laughed with when I was young, people I thought would always be there, and one by one, they all vanished. When you live for more than a century, you don't just watch people grow old, you watch entire worlds disappear. I've seen the world change more times than most people can imagine. I watched black and white televisions become glowing screens that fit in your pocket. I watched letters become emails, and then become text messages that people barely read. I watched families that once sat together at dinner slowly drift into silence, each person staring at a different screen. But after 101 years of living, there is one truth that follows me every single day like a shadow, a truth that still keeps me awake some nights. Here it is. Most people live their entire lives believing they have time. Time to fix things later. Time to say, I love you tomorrow. Time to reconnect after life gets less busy. Time to chase their dreams when the timing feels better. But what you don't understand, what I didn't understand for most of my life, is that time quietly disappears while you're busy believing you still have it. And the moment that first taught me this lesson didn't happen when I was old. It didn't happen at 90. It didn't happen at 80. It happened when I was just 33 years old. But here's the tragic part. Even though life showed me the truth that day, it still took me almost 70 more years to fully understand it. The day was October 14th, 1955. I remember it with terrifying clarity. It was a Friday, a perfectly ordinary Friday, the kind of day that feels so normal, you barely pay attention to it. My husband Robert had left for work that morning, just like he always did. He worked at the steel mill, a hard job, long hours, dangerous work. But Robert was the kind of man who never complained. Every morning before leaving, he would lean down, kiss my forehead, and say the same simple words, "See you tonight, Dorothy." We had been married 8 years. We had 2 little boys running around the house, James and William. Our life wasn't glamorous. We didn't have much money, but it was steady, predictable, safe. And that weekend, we had plans, small plans, nothing big, just dancing. There was a little hall in town where couples would gather on Saturdays. Music, laughter, cheap drinks, worn wooden floors, and Robert loved to dance. That Friday morning he smiled and said, "Don't forget, Dorothy, Saturday night, save me the first dance." I laughed and told him I would, but that Friday evening, Robert never came home. There was an accident at the mill. They told me it happened quickly. They always say that. They said he didn't suffer. They always say that too. But what nobody tells you, what nobody prepares you for, is this. When someone dies suddenly, they take every unsaid word with them, every "I love you" you thought you had time to say later, every apology you postponed, every hug you rushed through because you were busy. That night, I sat alone at our kitchen table. The house was silent. 2 little boys sleeping upstairs, not yet knowing their father was gone forever. And in that quiet moment, I made a promise to myself, a promise that felt sacred. I promised that from that day forward, I would never waste another day of my life again. I promised I would love people openly. I promised I would never postpone joy. I promised I would stop living like life was guaranteed. And do you know what happened? I broke that promise. Almost immediately. I truly believed that night had changed me forever. When someone you love disappears in a single moment, something inside you feels like it has been shattered permanently. For a while, it really does change you. The next morning when my boys woke up, I held them tighter than I ever had before. I kissed their foreheads again and again. I told them I loved them more times in one day than I probably had in the entire month before. For a few weeks, maybe even a few months, I thought I had finally learned the lesson life was trying to teach me. I thought I had become one of those people who truly understands how fragile life is. But then something very human happened. Life continued. Bills had to be paid, children had to be raised, dishes had to be washed, and slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, I drifted back into the same life I had always lived, not because I was a bad person, not because I didn't care, but because humans forget. That is the cruel trick life plays on all of us. Even the most painful lessons slowly fade. You start telling yourself you're doing better now. You hug people a little longer. You say, "I love you," a little more often, and you convince yourself you've changed. But deep down, you're still living as if tomorrow is guaranteed. A few years later, I remarried. His name was Charles. He was a kind man, gentle, patient, steady. The type of man who would quietly fix things around the house without ever asking for credit. We built a life together, not a dramatic life, not the kind you see in movies, but a real one. 42 years together. 42 ordinary, beautiful, messy years. And if you asked most people, they would probably say we had a good marriage. And we did. But when you live long enough, you start looking back at those years very differently. Because when people talk about regret, they think about the big mistakes, the terrible fights, the terrible decisions, the things that explode your life. But those aren't the regrets that stay with you when you're my age. The real regrets are much quieter. They are the moments that seem too ordinary to matter at the time, the small choices you barely noticed making, the Tuesday evenings when Charles would come home from work and say, "Dorothy, do you want to go for a walk?" And I would say, "Not tonight, I'm tired." Or, "Maybe tomorrow, I have laundry to finish." Laundry, can you imagine that? 42 years with a man I loved, and some of the moments I turned down were because of laundry. I told myself there would always be another evening, another walk, another conversation, another quiet moment together. And most of the time, there was, until one day, there wasn't. Charles died of heart failure when he was 78. One moment he was there, the next moment he wasn't. And suddenly, all those ordinary nights came rushing back to me, all the small invitations I declined, all the quiet moments I postponed. And that's when another terrible realization hit me. You don't just lose the people you love once. You lose them again and again inside your memory. Every time you remember a moment you rushed through, a conversation you didn't fully hear, a hug you ended too quickly because you had somewhere else to be. The memory becomes heavier because now you know something you didn't know then. That moment was never guaranteed. And the worst part, even after learning this lesson once, even after losing Robert, Even after losing Charles, life still had another heartbreak waiting to teach me the same truth again. My son William. He was 45 years old when the doctors told us the word nobody ever wants to hear, cancer. When the doctor first said the word cancer, I remember feeling a strange calm, not because I wasn't afraid, but because somewhere deep inside me, I believed we still had time. That's the lie we always tell ourselves. There's still time. Time for treatment. Time for recovery. Time for one more summer. Time for one more Christmas. But illness has a way of exposing the truth we spend our whole lives trying not to see. William got weaker slowly. At first it was small things. He got tired more easily. He lost weight. His voice became quieter. But he still smiled the same way he did when he was a little boy. Still tried to make jokes. Still told me not to worry. I spent months sitting beside his hospital bed, holding his hand, watching machines breathe and beep and blink around us. And one evening, when the sun was setting through the hospital window, William turned his head toward me and said something I will never forget for the rest of my life. He said, "Mom, I'm sorry I didn't call more." For a moment I couldn't breathe, because suddenly I realized something terrible. Here was my son, dying at 45 years old, and the thing he was apologizing for was not calling me enough. And all I could think was this: why do we wait until the end of life to say these things? Why do we save our honesty, our love, our apologies, until time is already gone? I wanted to shake him. I wanted to cry out and say, "William, why are we apologizing now? We had decades. We could have called each other every week. We could have had dinner together more often. We could have talked about everything." But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I did what people always do in moments like that. I lied. I squeezed his hand. And I said, "It's okay, sweetheart. We had plenty of time." But we didn't. We never do. William died 3 weeks later. And when you bury your own child, something inside you changes forever. The world becomes quieter. Birthdays feel different. Holidays feel heavier. And every phone call you didn't make suddenly feels like a stone sitting in your chest. Years passed. Life kept moving forward the way it always does. People say time heals everything. That's not true. Time doesn't heal. Time teaches you how to carry the pain. I eventually found love again. My third husband was named Frank. We met later in life when both of us had already been through enough heartbreak to understand how fragile happiness really is. Frank had a soft laugh, the kind of laugh that made other people start smiling without even knowing why. We spent 21 years together, 21 quiet, comfortable, ordinary years. And by then, I believed I had learned my lesson. After losing Robert, after losing William, after all those decades of life, surely by then I knew how to truly value time. Surely by then I knew how to be fully present with the people I loved. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Even after all that loss, even after living nearly an entire lifetime, I still made the same mistake everyone makes. Sometimes Frank would sit beside me telling a story he had told a dozen times before, and I would nod politely while secretly wishing he would finish faster. Sometimes he would try to show me something interesting he read in the newspaper, and instead of truly listening, my mind would drift somewhere else. Sometimes he would talk, and I would half listen, half present, half distracted, thinking there would always be another conversation tomorrow, but tomorrow is a promise life never actually makes. Frank died 2 years ago He was 98, a long life, a peaceful ending, and yet even after everything I had experienced, even after living for more than a century, I still caught myself thinking something that now breaks my heart. Sometimes, while he was speaking, I would glance down at my phone, just for a moment, just for a second, but those seconds add up, and now those seconds are gone forever. That is the lesson nobody teaches you when you're young, not the lesson about death. Everyone talks about death. The real lesson is about attention, about being fully present in the moments that seem ordinary, because those ordinary moments are actually your life. And most people don't realize that until it's far too late. Now, if you're young and listening to this, you're probably thinking something. You're thinking, this is sad. This is depressing. Of course people die. That's just life. But you're missing the point. The point isn't that people die. Everyone knows that. The real point, the thing most people never truly understand, is that you are living as if you are the exception. You believe the rules apply to everyone else. You believe loss will come later. You believe you'll have time later, time to travel, time to reconnect with people, time to slow down, time to live the life you keep promising yourself you'll start someday. But I'm 101 years old, and I can tell you something with absolute certainty. Later almost never comes. People spend their entire lives postponing the things that actually matter. You tell yourself you'll travel when you retire, but by the time retirement finally arrives, your knees hurt, your back aches, and the energy you once had to explore the world quietly disappeared years ago. You tell yourself you'll reconnect with your sister after this busy season at work, but that busy season somehow stretches into 10 years, then 20, and one day you realize she stopped calling too, not because she stopped loving you, but because life slowly pulled you both in different directions. You tell yourself you'll start writing that book one day, you'll learn that language one day, you'll take that trip, you'll have that conversation, you'll finally fix that relationship one day. But here's the cruel trick life plays on all of us. You already do have time right now. You just don't treat it like it's valuable. Instead, you trade it away. You trade it for things that won't matter 5 years from now. You spend hours worrying about problems that will solve themselves. You give your energy to people who drain you. You scroll through endless noise on your phone, convincing yourself you're relaxing, and all the while, your life is quietly passing by. If you're lucky enough to live as long as I have, something strange eventually happens. You begin looking back, and when you do, you realize something shocking. You actually had all the time you needed. You just didn't use it the way you should have. You thought you were saving your life for later, but later slowly turned into never. I'm not telling you to quit your job tomorrow. I'm not telling you to abandon your responsibilities and run away to find yourself. Life isn't that simple. What I'm telling you is something much harder. I'm telling you to pay attention, right now, today, to how you're actually spending your life. Let me ask you something simple. Is your grandmother still alive? If she is, call her today, not tomorrow, today, because I am a grandmother, and I can tell you exactly what she might be doing right now. She might be sitting somewhere quietly, maybe looking through old photographs, maybe staring out a window, thinking about the people she loves, thinking about the grandchildren who used to visit more often, the grandchildren who used to call, and she's probably telling herself something gentle. She's telling herself they're busy. They have their own lives. I understand. But even when she says that, Her heart breaks a little bit more each day. Your parents are the same. If you're lucky enough to still have them in your life, please understand something. They will not be here forever. And when they're gone, you won't care about the arguments you had years ago. You won't care that they were difficult sometimes. You won't care that they didn't always understand you. What you will care about are the moments you didn't show up, the phone calls you didn't make, the visits you kept postponing, the afternoons you could have spent together but didn't. I know this because now I am that parent. I had 2 sons. William, you already know about. He died 38 years ago. My other son, James, is 76 years old now, and every single Sunday, without fail, he comes to visit me, rain or shine, cold weather, hot weather, doesn't matter. Every Sunday afternoon he walks through my door and says, "Hi, Mom," and every time I hear those words, my heart fills with more joy than I can describe. He sits with me. We drink tea. We talk about small things. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we sit quietly. And after a few hours, he stands up, hugs me, and says, "I'll see you next Sunday." Then I watch him walk out the door. I watch him walk down the small path to his car. And every single time he leaves, the same thought enters my mind. Will I see him again? At my age, every goodbye might be the last one. That isn't sadness. That's just mathematics. But here's something you need to understand. That truth doesn't only apply to old people. It applies to you too. Every goodbye you say might be the last one. You just don't believe it yet. I have a great-great-granddaughter. Her name is Sophie. She's 16 years old, bright, funny, full of life. Last month she came to visit me. She sat across from me on the couch, and for most of the visit, she was looking down at her phone, her fingers moving across the screen, messages, notifications, endless little conversations with people who weren't even in the room. I didn't say anything, because what's the point? She's 16. She believes she has forever. She believes moments like sitting with her ancient great-great-grandmother will always be available, but they won't. And someday, years from now, she will remember that afternoon. She will remember coming to visit me. And she will remember that she spent most of that visit looking at her phone. And that memory will hurt her in a way she can't imagine today. That is the pain I wish I could save you from, not the pain of big mistakes. Those you can eventually forgive yourself for. No, the worst pain is something much quieter. It's the regret of not being present, being physically there, but mentally somewhere else, sitting with someone you love, while your attention drifts to something that doesn't matter, treating the people in your life as if they will always be there, but they won't. I can feel my life slowing down now, not in a frightening way, just in a peaceful, knowing way. My body is tired. It's been working for more than a century, and it knows it's almost time to rest. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I've had a long life, much longer than most people ever get, but what hurts me sometimes is thinking about how much of that life I lived half asleep, running through days, rushing through conversations, treating ordinary moments like they didn't matter. Because here's the truth I learned 70 years too late. The moments that truly matter in life are not the big ones. Not your wedding day, not your promotion, not your graduation. Those are beautiful memories. But they are not the ones that stay with you at the end. The ones that stay with you are much simpler. A random Tuesday afternoon when your father tried to show you how to fix something and you were patient instead of annoyed. A Saturday morning when you made pancakes with your kids and nobody was in a hurry. A quiet walk with your partner when you actually listened instead of thinking about what to say next. Those moments, the quiet, ordinary, completely unremarkable moments, that is your life. And they are happening right now. Not someday, not next year, right now. But you have to choose them. You have to fight for them, because everything in the modern world is designed to steal your attention, your phone, your work, your ambitions, your worries, your endless to-do list. They will keep pulling you away from the only thing that actually matters. Presence. If I could go back in time, back to that night when I was 33 years old, standing in my kitchen after Robert died, this is what I would tell myself. Dorothy, the promise you're making tonight, that you'll never waste another day again, you're going to break it over and over again, because you're human, and humans forget. But that's not the real failure. Your real job is something much simpler. Remember and return every time you forget, every time you drift back into distraction, every time you start taking people for granted again. Just notice it and return. Return to the moment. Return to the person sitting in front of you. Return to attention. Return to love. Not perfectly, just consistently. I'm 101 years old. I've lived more than 36,000 days, and if I'm being honest, I can count on two hands the number of days I was completely fully present. That is my real regret. Not that I didn't make more money, not that I didn't travel more, not that I didn't achieve more. My regret is that I sleepwalked through so much of my own life. Please don't do what I did. Don't wait decades to understand this. Don't wait until people you love are gone to realize how much they mattered. Stop for a moment. Look around you. Really look at the people in your life, at the moments happening around you right now, because I promise you, with everything I have left, later never comes. If this message touched your heart, don't just move on. Take one moment right now. Call someone you love. Life is shorter than we think. And if you want more real stories and wisdom like this, subscribe to the channel, because the next story might change your life.